Before we dive into the world of pfSense, I think it's probably wise to explain a little bit about firewalls. So, what is a firewall? A firewall is either software or hardware that sits at the forefront of your network to help protect your equipment on the inside from pesky internet thieves, black hats, crackers, or malicious software such as worms. The basic way that it works is you assign certain rules within the software to say what kind of traffic you want to let through and what you want blocking. Depending on the type of firewall you go with, some rules are already preset, which means that it blocks all the traffic from the minute you plug it in, until you say otherwise. So, if that's a firewall, what the hell's pfSense? Good question. Let's find out. pfSense is an open source operating system or software distribution for networks and is based on the FreeBSD operating system. More specifically, it is the software that you would have running on your router or firewall like the one your ISP might have provided you with, only a lot more powerful with a lot more customization options. It can be installed on either a physical machine or a virtual machine, the latter being extremely helpful if you don't want tons of physical hardware lying around, or if you just can't justify building or buying the equipment for a dedicated firewall. It does have support for third-party package installation, as well as tons of other features you would normally pay for on expensive commercial-grade firewalls. It is well known for its reliability and amazing community support in the form of the pfSense forums found in the description below. Sounds great, right? So how much is it? Well, the astute of you watching will have noticed at the beginning I said open source. To those that aren't sure what I mean by that, it means completely free. Yes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, pfSense is free to openly download and install to your heart's content, and can even be modified if you so please. I have been implementing it now into networks for a few years and can honestly say it is my favourite firewall. I'm sure every network admin has their own ones that they prefer to use for one reason or another, but for those of you comfortable trying different things, or even looking for a replacement, pfSense is a great platform to start on. So what are we running it on? I mentioned earlier that it can be installed on physical hardware or a virtual machine. Now, lucky for me, I have access to one of pfSense's UK partners, which means I have easy access to buying and purchasing boxes that come pre-installed with pfSense on, ready to install directly onto a network. And one of those boxes is exactly what we're going to be using today. We have a not for resale version of the SG2440, which is the second box up in the pfSense pre-built range. The standard 2440s come with a 4GB eMMC onboard flash card with the latest version of pfSense installed, 4GB of DDR3L RAM, 4GB Intel network ports, and a dual-core Intel Atom CPU with Intel Quick Assist, and a mini USB port for those of you that like to access these things via SSH. You can of course customise a few of these things if you need to by adding in either an extra SSD in either 30, 60 or 128GB capacities, the point of which I'll explain later, and you also have the option to add in a Wi-Fi card like ours was here. Ours was bought specifically for testing purposes, hence why we went with the Wi-Fi model. However, it is usually much better to pair a pfSense box up with a dedicated access point. A, for added security, and B, because pfSense's support for some wireless cards can be flaky if you're building it yourself and generally doesn't have great support for 802.11n Wi-Fi cards. So just bear that in mind if you want to build one yourself. We now have some sort of an idea as to what pfSense is and the options available when it comes to the hardware side of things. So let's get on with some setup and configuration.
We're going to be doing a basic setup of pfSense today just to get you up and running on the network. We will do more advanced videos later on that show things like setting up VPN connections and things like that. The first thing you need to do is open up a web browser and type in https://192.168.1.1, as that is the default IP address for pfSense. Most of you are going to get a connection is not private issue of some sort. Just go straight through it. It's totally normal to get this the first time you connect up to pfSense. You're then going to get the login screen. The username is admin and the password is just pfSense. Once you get the setup wizard, you'll go through the standard screens. Just click on the next button. You'll get a little bit of information on the pfSense Gold subscription, which is really handy if you can afford to go down that route. You get to have up to 10 machines with an auto config backup, so any changes you make automatically get backed up, which is really handy in case you make a big mistake. Next screen is your host name, which you can change to practically whatever you want. pfSense is always a good one, so you know what it is. Local domain is your domain, and if you've got a DNS server, you can set those in there, and I would suggest leaving that ticked if you're just using it for home or simple setup. Time server is pretty standard, just leave it as it is and set your time zone to wherever you're at in the world, and click on the next button. Now you get the WAN interface configuration. Most people here will either be DHCP or PPPoE. We're going to stick with PPPoE, and this is based this on a standard BT broadband connection in the UK. You would type in your username, which for BT is just admin@btbroadband.com. The password is usually BT. This usually works with any BT business or BT home ADSL or fibre setup. The rest of the settings can be left blank unless you know you need to change them, but make sure you leave the last two tick boxes on. These are going to block private networks from getting it in. Next stage is your LAN setup, which is basically the IP address of the pfSense itself. We're going to leave it on the standard .1.1 that it comes to default with. The subnet mask is in binary, which means a 24 subnet mask would be 255.255.255.0. 16 would be 255.255.0.0 and so on. Best thing to do is, if you're just having a standard setup and you've only got 250 users that are going to be on at the most, leave it on 24 and carry on through. Next section is pretty self-explanatory. Set yourself a new password to actually get into the box. Once that's done, it'll ask you to save your changes and reload. Once it's finished reloading, you'll get a screen up that tells you it's finished. Click here to go through to the dashboard. So this is the main dashboard, and is where most of the stuff goes on with regards to status. You can see pretty much everything within here. You have the standard name in the top left hand corner, which is your host name and your domain name. The version of pfSense that you're running, and in this situation we're not actually connected to the network, to our broadband line, but if we were, that would tell us if there was a new version available and we could update it directly from there. You've got things like CPU type, which shows you the frequency that that's running at as well, uptime of the machine, DNS servers, which will automatically change once that's got through to your ADSL connection, things like CPU usage, all that kind of stuff. And the WAN section there would be the external IP address that you get given through your ISP, which obviously will change through DHCP unless you've got a static one that you will have set up earlier. So I've just gone straight through to the DHCP leases here, which show you what's connected at the time and what's receiving an IP address from the box. You can see here that the PC we're using is connected and has an IP address. Then we move over to the DHCP server itself. Now, if you were setting this up as a secondary box, you would want to disable DHCP, unless of course you wanted pfSense to do the DHCP routing, in which case you would, turn that off there and have the settings set up in the first box instead. We're going to leave it on, and you can see here that you can set your DHCP range, so all the IP addresses that are going to be handed out through DHCP, you can change that to whatever you want as long as it's in the same subnet as your router. The rest of it can pretty much be left blank for a basic setup. If you need to set up DNS servers, you can do, but most people will not need to, at least for a standard configuration. Make sure you hit the save button if you make any changes, otherwise they will not be saved. That's about it for the very basic pfSense setup. This will get you up and running on the internet, and is by default blocking all incoming traffic, so you're not going to have to worry about anyone trying to get in there. If you needed to change that, you'd go to the firewall section where you've got your rules and NAT, which is your port forwarding. Any port forwarding that you need to do under the NAT section, as it will automatically put that in the rules later, but we'll go through that on another video. I'm not really doing pfSense any justice at the moment, as this is a very basic setup and not really showcasing a lot of what pfSense can do. Hopefully we'll be able to show you that in upcoming videos where we'll go to dive a little bit deeper into what you can and can't do with it, including some very technical stuff. Like the video if you liked it, disliked it if you didn't like it, leave a suggestion in the comment section below and go watch one of our other videos. Thanks for watching.